Hello everybody, we are going to be talking about the Boston Bruins, the fact that they ended up winning the President's Trophy last night, and a good win for them against the Columbus Blue Jackets, and then we are going to compare this season compared to other seasons for the Bruins and the times that they've won the President's Trophy and what exactly that could say for them and their history, all that good stuff. Now, before we start, I wanted to say please make sure to subscribe to my channel if you're new to me, new to hockey, whatever the case may be. I'd love to have you here along the way as I try to do this as a career. Now let's get into it. And last night, of course, like I said, the Bruins got a good win against Columbus. They were down 1-0 early in that game, and you wondered, maybe would they not pick up some points in the fairly winnable game, but of course they came away with the 2 points and clinched the President's Trophy for them, and they won the trophy in just 75 games played, having 58 wins in the stretch, and that is actually the most ever by any Boston Bruins team. That's a pretty big deal because this is a very old club that has had some very good, rosters and some very good seasons and has been able to win the championship multiple times. So that was pretty impressive to me to know that they are a trend-setting team and they are able to break records for a very, very old club, an original six club. And while you could argue, the President's Trophy has theoretically existed since the beginning of the NHL, really it hasn't existed since the 1985-86 season where it actually became a trophy and then you were rewarded for that. I actually think they get $350,000 this year and they get to divide that among themselves and then like staff and stuff like that. So we are going to be talking about every time that the Bruins have won the President's Trophy since the 1985-86 season when it began, and the Edmonton Oilers actually were the first club to win it. But yeah, so having a look back at other seasons for the Bruins where they won it and seeing how this stacks up compared to them. So they have won the President's Trophy 4 times, and excluding this one, the other 3 times came in 1990, 2014, and then 2020. And for these quads, the Bruins have been able to be the best version of themselves this year because they're on a pace to, break records, have the most wins. But last night they broke the record, of course, of the 1970-71 team where they were tied with them for 57 wins. But in terms of the President's Trophy seasons, you had 1990 where they won just 46 games. Things were a little bit different back then too. And then in 2014 they won 54 games before in 2020 they would go on to win 44 games. Notably though, the 1990 and 2020 campaigns were not a full 82-game season. In 1990, that was an 80-game season. They tweaked some stuff around there back in the day. They played like 2 84-game seasons sometime in the late 90s. But yeah, it was just kind of one of those things. And of course, you remember what happened in 2020. So of course, more wins than any other season. They're going to have more wins in those years that they won the President's Trophy. So that is good for them. But most importantly, how did those other President's Trophy Bruins teams end up doing in the postseason? Because that's kind of what the talking point is for this group. How far can they go in the playoffs? What can they achieve? What is going to happen with their legacy? So let's take a little bit of a look back at history. And we will kick it off with the 1990 Bruins, who actually ended up going to the Stanley Cup Final before losing to the Edmonton Oilers side that won the series in 5 games and ended up winning the championship for the 5th time in 7 seasons. This was one of those years where you maybe didn't expect Edmonton win it. They were still, of course, going to be a good group, but this is the season that going into it, they lost Wayne Gretzky and he went over to the LA Kings. So you lose Gretzky and you still somehow find a way to win the championship without the best player of your generation, probably the best player of all time. I know a lot of people are going to argue Lemieux. That's suddenly been a thing that's heated up in recent years. But one of the all-time greats, the great one, if you will. So that was interesting there and painful for the Bruins because this was the 2nd time in 3 seasons that they'd lost to the Oilers in the Stanley Cup Final, the other time being in 1988. That might have been a clean sweep, but it might actually have been 5 games. Either way, it was a quick series if I remember right. So yeah, painful. Then we fast forward till 2014, where the fans of the Black and Gold could say that their team was the best team of the regular season. So what exactly went down in the 2014 playoffs, and how did they do? Well, coming off of a 117-point season, they ended up just really having a heartbreaking loss to their arch rivals, the Montreal Canadiens, in the 2nd round in Game 7 of the 2nd round. it hurts even more because you think back to the season prior that they went to the Stanley Cup final and they lost to the Chicago Blackhawks, and 6 games should have been a 7th game. We all know there should have been a 7th game. I had Bickle, I think it was Bickle, not been able to score that goal. Had the Bruins just been able to hold that lead in Game 6, I really would have liked to have seen what happened in Game 7. One of those big hockey what-ifs. But yeah, so the following year, after the Stanley Cup final heartbreak, they have a very, very painful loss. Some would say even more painful than the Stanley Cup final loss because it was to the Habs in Game 7. And another great season by the Bruins where they weren't able to bring home the trophy. And then fast forward to the very odd 2019-2020 season where the Spoke-to-Be squad were the league's best team, but unfortunately saw another early exit in the second round in 5 games to the eventual champions, the Tampa Bay Lightning. That one was where you felt like they were probably overmatched. Going into that series, I was hopeful Boston could do it, but I think a lot of people realized that Tampa Bay was looking for blood after the season prior where they had all that heartbreak and their own early exit, so that happened there. But if you look at this and say history means anything, then these are bad omens for the Bruins. Do I personally think that they're bad omens for the Bees? No. It's just all superstition really at the end of the day. You know, I think a lot of people take too much stock into this. I'm not a very superstitious person. I think when I was a really little kid, I was, and I think parts of my family are, but I don't really buy the whole President's Trophy curse. Did you know, this is kind of my arguing point back to that the President's Trophy winners back in a 4-period stretch won the Stanley Cup 3 times in 4 years, that coming in 1999 with the Dallas Stars, 2001 with the Colorado Avalanche, and then 2002 with the Detroit Red Wings. So looking back at that, I guarantee if we went to a 2003 Stanley Cup playoff preview where they were talking about whoever won the President's Trophy that year, if I had to take a bet, I'm willing, it was the Senators that year, but I had to take a bet here and probably say that in that preview at some point they're going to say, oh, well, the things are going very well for teams that win the President's Trophy. Now, it's just been a little bit of a while. Salary cap's kind of been in the talks there too. And so having just 2 teams win the President's Trophy and then win the Stanley Cup after the salary cap era, those being the 2008 Detroit Red Wings and 2013 Chicago Blackhawks, I think that kind of makes it to where there's this whole curse. It's just hard because there's no salary, or there is a salary cap. And then in general, look at back before that, it wasn't like they won all the time, they won more, but it's just hockey. It's hard. There's more competitiveness. I think that teams are a little bit more even than they used to be, of course, with the salary cap. So I just think that it's really one of those things where you got to throw all that stuff out. This is a good team, like I've said all year. I will say in my preview, I said I wasn't sure if they're going to make the playoffs because I imagined Tampa Bay and Toronto were locks, and I imagined Florida would be there, so I thought they'd be in a wild card hunt. Here they are. They're getting guys like Krejci that came back, and they're having a very good year. They know they're good. They know they're experienced. They know that they've got guys that have been there, done that, and they've got guys that want to get back there and to do it again. They're not going to buy into the whole curse thing. Again, I just think it's all a bunch of superstition and nothing really to buy into, but I want to hear what you have to say. Compared to seeing other Bruins seasons, do you think this is the best season ever in team history? And do you also think that they will be able to win the Stanley Cup and break the curse that is the President's Trophy curse, and also win it for the first time out of the 4 times that they've won it after winning the President's Trophy? Love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. Also, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night, and you all have hockey all right. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.